Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Bradburn, and alongside me is Logan Camden, and today we're just hitting a quick little YouTube-only special for you guys because we haven't previewed Cavs-Celtics yet, and with that game tipping off later today, we obviously had to get to it. So Logan, what's the first key that stands out to you in that matchup?
The first key to me, man, is just if anybody can get Donovan Mitchell some help on offense in Cleveland, dude. It's a really simple key, but it's the biggest one to me in this series, dude. Mitchell, 28.7 points per game in this playoff run. He's been an absolute superhero, dude, creating everything for Cleveland, getting downhill, taking every shot. We know in Game 6, he puts up 50 points. His team doesn't even crack 100 points total. I read off some of the numbers back then, he's one of three players now in NBA history to have three 50-point playoff games. He's one of two in NBA history to notch 50 points in a playoff game where their team doesn't crack 100 points. Donovan Mitchell was a superhero in the first round series for an abysmal Cleveland offense, Carson. They averaged 1 point per possession offensively, just an abysmal mark through the first round. That was the worst in all of the playoff field in the first round outside of New Orleans. They just need other guys to step up, man. Jarrett Allen is going to be out in this series, and so that means that Darius Garland has got to step up.
Well, we don't know that for sure yet.
I expect Allen, and I think that's a big hindrance on what this team can do on both sides of the ball, man. It's a huge loss if he misses any time. Porzingis is expected to be out for the entirety of this series, too, so it balances out a little more, but the Celtics just have more firepower, man. And so I looked at Darius Garland as the guy that's got to step up mostly. We've seen stretches in the first round, Carson, where Garland was hitting his threes. He was getting downhill. He was setting teammates up, but it's been in spurts. And then we all know Evan Mobley's offensive shortcomings, man. He has not stretched his game out to space the floor. He doesn't have a reliable post game. So I'm just looking at where the other Cleveland offense is going to come from against a good Boston defense, man. You turn into the bench and just trying to spray some threes with Niang, Dean Wade, Sam Merrill, or can we expect the other stars to step up?
Healthy.
Yeah, exactly, man. And that's where the Cavs are at in this series. So it's a real uphill battle, but somebody outside of Donovan Mitchell has to put the ball in the bucket.
Absolutely. The Cavs were already going to be at a major talent deficit, and then you have the questions about Jarrett Allen's availability. Obviously, he misses Game 7 of last series. If he were close to good to go, he would have played, and he's questionable for Game 1 here. Maybe we see him at some point, but he is legitimately huge. The biggest question, though, is just how does Cleveland produce enough offense to hang in this series, because it is a problem. Man, Darius Garland last series, just 15 a night on 54.5% true shooting. Wildly inconsistent and just really disappointing. Evan Mobley, 13 a night on 53% true shooting. Consistently awesome defensively, but struggled finishing around the rim. Again, struggled with anything outside of the restricted area. Really, really struggled there. And just was a labored offensive performer overall. Karis LeVert, who at times can be a dynamic bench scorer, gives you 7 points per game on 46% true shooting. They were dead last in threes made last series, and they were 15th of 16 teams in three-point percentage, under 29%. And Mitchell really struggled as a pull-up shooter, so that doesn't help. But they averaged 0.65 points per spot-up, Logan, which is unsurprisingly the worst in the playoff field. That is incomprehensibly bad. So they're not making their pull-up jumpers right now, but more importantly, because that could swing, Donovan Mitchell could absolutely get hot. The guys around him aren't capable of spacing the floor consistently and knocking down their spot-up jumpers. They posted a half-court offensive rating of 87 versus Orlando. The fact that you can win a playoff series like that is ridiculous, and it says a lot about the specific grittiness and toughness and defensive orientation of that matchup. But there's just an overwhelming burden on Donovan Mitchell, dude. He was great those last two games, but he had to go for 88 points on 63 shots over the last two games for them to eke by Orlando. It wasn't enough in Game 6. They had to come back in Game 7. This is a whole different beast with Boston. He is going to be swarmed here. He is going to be hounded by elite perimeter defenders for 48 minutes without another consistent offensive threat. And although he was phenomenal in those last two games, consistently getting downhill, incredible touch in the paint, incredible footwork and paint navigation, and he was able to dominate without having those pull-up jumpers falling. It's just too much to ask, especially considering that he was inconsistent and he had some really rough performances last series, and the knee does still seem to be something of a factor. I just don't see how Cleveland has the offensive punch to hang in here, even if Mitchell is awesome.
I don't either, man. And I think it's really telling that last series, too, you talk about how grimy the series was. It was for both teams. I mean, we noted during the series, dude, Cleveland is turning to Max Strus handoffs and offense with Marcus Morris and Tristan Thompson minutes. Like, this is a team that is just so desperate in searching for answers offensively, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that, you're right, dude, the fact that an offense this bad that could even survive in a first-round series is really remarkable. Like, it is going to take a complete changing of the tide for Cleveland's offense in one way or the other. Like, it's Jared Allen coming back healthy and be really, disruptive and effective. It is going to take LeVert and Garland completely flipping their games on their heads from what they did in the first round. It's going to take torrential shooting to even get close here against Boston, man. It is just such an uphill battle, and a lot of this burden is going to lay on Donovan Mitchell's shoulders. I just don't think that it's going to be enough. And on the flip side of this, right, if you're optimistic about Cleveland's chances, it's probably because Kristaps Porzingis is not going to be out there on the court. And there are a few things that I like on the inverse of this without Porzingis. That being said, the Celtics were 22-4 without Porzingis this season, right? Like, I think he's Boston's second best player, but they were still great without him. They still have so much talent on this basketball team. And they held the Heat to an offensive rating of 100 in round one. They were swarming. Like, the only positive that I can take away for Cleveland, Carson, is that maybe Boston shoots themselves out of a couple of games. Boston shot the most jump shots during the regular season. They shot the most jump shots in the playoffs in the first round. Like, that's encouraging for a game or two. Maybe Boston can shoot themselves out of a game or two, but I just don't see that formula holding up for an entire series. And it just really is a tall task for Cleveland, man, without Jared Allen. This is a remarkable number to me, and it's not a huge sample size, only 33 minutes. But, Carson, the Cavs were outscored 25 points per 100 possessions without Jared Allen in the regular season. That's 14 points in 33 minutes without Jared Allen against Boston in the regular season series. And I think that's a huge dynamic. Like, not only is Boston a really skilled team, like, they're still pretty big, man, with Horford, with Tillman, guys that can bang down low. Obviously, it's exacerbated a little bit without Porzingis, but I don't think Cleveland, can negate that because they just have Mobley. Like, it's not like their five depth is great either. Both of these teams are at a real lack of big depth too. Like, I don't know, man. I really struggle coming up with advantages or areas where Cleveland's going to be able to convincingly win against Boston. Really, the way I see Boston is Boston beating themselves. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know, man. I really struggle seeing any area in which Cleveland has a distinct advantage over Boston in this series.
First of all, I don't think that we're going to see much Xavier Tillman in this series. I think we'll see more of America's sweetheart, Luke Cornett.
Oh, my God.
I think we'll see more of him, but I don't think we're going to see a lot of either one. I don't think we're going to see a lot of either one, dude. They don't really need that second legitimate big in the rotation in this matchup, and we just know that the minutes that they are getting from Pritchard and Hauser are so solid. And without Allen on the floor, like, Cleveland just doesn't really have the size to expose the lack of a second quality big. So if there's optimism for Cleveland, I don't think it's about Boston shooting themselves in the foot, right? They're not going to do that in 4 of 7 games. We know that they have had these underwhelming playoff performances, but it has to be about the foundation that this defense provides. Allen is huge there because with him on the floor, Cleveland can actually control the glass. They can really challenge Boston defensively. That allows them to just freely switch their bigs and still have an awesome rim protector at all times because both Mobley and Allen are so good in space, and then one of them can be holding down the interior. It gives them their best interior finisher offensively, Jared Allen, who's been much more consistent there than Mobley. It's just essential to them having a chance in this series because then they can physically impose themselves more. They can lean into their defensive identity and their size. I do think that this team is well equipped to guard Jaylen and Jayson. Last meeting that we saw between these teams, they started with Okoro on Tatum and Mobley on Brown. I really like Mobley on Brown, because although Jaylen is obviously a good shooter, it allows Mobley to help off a bit and to be active as a rim protector in help. And he can guard Jaylen in single coverage. Like, he can guard a whole lot of wings in single coverage, man. He is a special defensive player. The problem is, if Jared Allen isn't on the floor, I just don't think that you can do that. I think that Horford, although we don't think of him as an offensive threat at this stage in his career, if you put a wing on him, like, he's been a really effective mismatch attacker this year. Hasn't done it a bunch, but when he does, he's averaged almost 1.3 points per post up. So that's another spot where the absence of Allen would hurt you. But they have good options. That's the good news. When they do have both bigs, either one of them can switch onto Jaylen or Jayson. Okoro and Strus can both guard either of them capably. Again, these are dudes who are strong, who have low centers of gravity, who move their feet very well. If you get Dean Wade back, he's a good option. Tatum struggled versus Cleveland this year. He shot just 39% and particularly struggled inside the arc. It wasn't like he just had a brutal three-point shooting series, which you could say is just volatility. That's not about the matchup. He struggled finishing around the rim, and that speaks to this Cleveland defense on the interior. Jaylen played fine against them. I think they have good options there. The problem is just, how do you make that even matter by producing enough offensively? And how do you deal with the depth of offensive weapons that are here in Boston? Because that's the thing. Even if you play Jaylen and Jayson well, Boston is going to have 5 awesome shooters on the floor at all times. Derek White can step up and give you 20 in any game. He just averaged 22 a night on 74% true shooting. He, Holiday, and Horford are all 40% three-point shooters. Like, you talk about the downside with Boston being so jump shot reliant. Sure, there's way more upside. It's way more of a positive. That only really starts to matter if we're holding them to the standard of the absolute best teams in the league who have less variant formulas, like a Denver in the theoretical finals matchup that we talked about in the past that probably isn't going to be anymore. Shout out Minnesota. But the ceiling of by far leading the league in threes made, having so many great shooters on the floor at all times, like, Cleveland just can't compete with that. And the fact that Cleveland is so phenomenal in help, that they're so good at taking away those attempts around the rim, that is very much challenged by the fact that Boston is as good as a drive and kick team as anybody, and they have lethal shooting everywhere. So it's just a mismatch here. It's a complete talent mismatch, and Donovan Mitchell is just going to have to do so much, and this is a tough draw, dude. Anybody, when you're looking at like the overwhelming burden on a star guard, Mitchell this series, if it's Jaylen Brunson in the conference finals, there's hardly a tougher matchup than Boston, because although I don't think they're the best defense in the league, Minnesota is, and frankly, Minnesota is a tougher matchup for anybody, but Boston is particularly tough for those smaller guards because of how many elite perimeter defenders they have. The fact that they can switch everything so comfortably, and you are never going to get a break for even a minute. I'm going Boston in 5. I think Mitchell does explode so much that he gets him 1. I think those pull-up threes are going to start falling more, and when you combine that with the downhill pressure, he can just take over a game. He's done it before. I expect him to do it once, and I think we probably get one Boston lapse in focus game where they go up 2-0, they go up 3-0, and they take their foot off the gas. We know that this team is prone to doing that, but it's tough to see things going beyond that.
Yeah, and that's what I talk about the shooting. I don't expect it to bite Boston in the ass for an entire series. I expect it to bite them in their ass for a game. I'm also taking Cleveland in 5.
Cleveland in 5. I love it. Bold.
No, Boston in 5. I think Boston has one of their patented Boston Celtics games where they don't show up. They clang a bunch of threes. They turn the ball over. They're disengaged. Mitchell has a big game, but I don't think it's going to be enough. Yes, and Boston is let out by my favorite Celtics defenders, Jaylen Brunson and Alex Caruso, dude. I freaking love those guys. They are such good point of attack defenders. They're going to bottle up Donovan Mitchell all series long.
That was hilarious.
Dude,
for those who missed it,
2 of 4 on active Celtics is actually crazy, man.
So we had Matt Sponhour on the show yesterday. Logan was talking about all of the great perimeter defenders who Jaylen Brunson would have to face in a theoretical Eastern Conference Finals. And the names that he listed off were Derek White, Alex Caruso, Jayson Tatum, and Jaylen Brunson. And I was looking up a stat, so I didn't process that he said that. And Sponhour just sort of like raised his eyebrow. He made a hilarious face. That's the second time in a matter of weeks that Logan has just casually slipped in that Alex Caruso plays for the Boston Celtics.
He just seems like a Celtic, right, man?
Because he's white.
And he's
Is
bald.
that what you're saying? He is bald, and you can't tell bald people apart, which would be offensive if you weren't bald yourself.
Exactly.
But bald blindness is a real thing, dude, and it's not something that I'm going to just sit here and allow to happen.
My favorite Celtics defender, Howie Mandel, dude. He's going to clamp up Donovan Mitchell this series.
Shout out J.K. Simmons, bro. I think he comes in big in this series. All right, guys, we're going to be back tonight. Just a little quick preview here. Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, always more Nerd Sesh content. Tune in for our reaction to tonight's game ones. Check out our thoughts on yesterday's action. Check out our video essays. Follow us across social for trivia content. Check out our merch at thevolume.com if you want. And with that, as always, appreciate you guys. I've been Carson Brabber.
I have been Logan Camden.
And this was Nerd Sesh.